prospectors, Tony from Gold Talk Leonora. Just finished a day's work with Tiny and Daisy, and just sitting in the air conditioning for 5 minutes to gather oneself. A little bit warm out there today. One of the subscribers asked a question, and look, I thought I'd just do a video about it. To be honest, it actually helps me because sometimes I don't know what to talk about, and I think if I'm answering somebody's direct question, then I'm assuming that other people have or will be thinking the same thing. So, and anyway, this fella, and I'm sort of making some assumptions again, which is dangerous, but I got the feeling that he's done plenty of metal detecting and prospecting, and he's going all right. And he said about he's looking at getting a lease over here in the west, you know, sort of what are my thoughts about how much gold should have come off it to make it worth his time to push it or dry blight or anything else. And it's a really bloody good question, and straight up, no idea is the answer. I wouldn't have a bloody clue. Dare I say it, I don't have a crystal ball. But I can tell you things that I consider when I'm assessing ground, and sort of based on our own experience, where things have worked and haven't worked, and maybe you'll find the answer in there for you. And you know, that's it, and that's sort of probably the first thing I'd say is that everyone's financial position is different. Everyone's stage in life in terms of whether you're 25 and having a crack at this, or 75 and enjoying life, you know what I mean? Everyone's sort of different, but so you got to work it out yourself basically. But the bottom line is that you'll never know how much gold has come off a lease. It's pretty unlikely that anyone telling you or selling it is going to tell the truth anyway. And in fairness, they're not going to have any idea, because okay, you might get out there with the 6,000 and pick up 10 ounces and you think that's bloody fantastic. But it's also pretty unlikely that it's a virgin patch and you're the first one on the scene. So has there been 20 ounces, 30 ounces, 100 ounces that's come off that area? It's you're just not going to know. The next thing is that it doesn't matter in some ways what gold has come off a lease, because that may or may not give you any indication of what may still be there. And our experience over a lot of years and doing a lot of earth moving is probably 7 out of 10 sites, there's nothing there. Might pick up a few scraps, but there's just nothing there. And that's the truth. It's a numbers game. You have to be pushing a lot of dirt and in the game for a while, or maybe your first project, who knows, but you need to be chipping away at it. It's a numbers game, and you just don't know when your numbers are going to come up. I find that if you do chip away at it, your numbers will come up, alright, but you've got to be prepared and be able to afford the duffers along the way. You know, to give you an example of you know, sort of personal examples where there's been sort of several hundred ounces come off the surface, and you push something for half a gram, or so, you know, maybe half an ounce or something, but either way, there's nothing there. And we've had other instances where we've you know, we've had a bit of machinery walking past, and it's like, oh, you know, we've got a few little ones there 1,000 years ago, we'll just have a scratch and happy days. The thing is, we have a huge advantage, and that is that metal detectors are really, really useless in many circumstances. The counter to that is that every man and his dog's got top of the wazoo metal detector and they're out here doing it. So a lot of the telltale signs that we're looking for out in the paddocks is long gone. It doesn't matter who's getting it or how they're getting it, and that makes it very hard for people to come in behind them and assess a patch of dirt. Okay, so even though I'm probably sounding really negative to this point, don't confuse that with me being really, really cautious, and that's the key to it. I'm never in a rush to peg ground unless I really want it. Then I'm in a hell of a rush. I'm never desperate for ground, and I don't get ground just for the sake of it. It's got to have a good pedigree for me to even look at it. Getting the right ground is going to be the key to your success. All right. There'll be a number of other keys that if you muck them up, they'll bite you on the backside too. But basically, the grade is king in the mining industry, and if you haven't got the ground with the grade in it, you're going broke, whether you know it or not. Okay. So there's always an element of taking a punt. I listen, but I never rely on what other people are telling me, no matter how good they are or what they think they are. Unless I'm seeing the gold's coming out of the ground, it's got no history to me. So that's one thing. Depending on what I want to do with the ground, if I'm real estating, then location is everything. That's not my cup of tea, so I don't go down that path. Sometimes things drop in your laps during mining booms and happy days, and then your location can be really important. I actually believe in working the ground and chasing gold. So for me, it's got to have a bloody good history of alluvial gold. Shafts are always a good sign, but previous scrapes, from the 1980s, and not just one or two, where an area's been heavily pushed, fantastic. Ground that's in the laterite, so in the lateritic dura crust, and been pushed, and the cap has not been touched, that's an outside punt for me, but one that I absolutely will have a look at as well. Just ground that some muppet's selling on eBay because they say they're getting an ounce a week off it, it's just bullshit, and don't fall into that trap just because you're desperate to get a bit of dirt. Just because the ground's got a bit of got a program of works over it, a POW, so what? POWs cost nothing and any muppet can get one. So as in any tenement holder, muppet can get one. So that really means nothing. And again, I've done a video on some of the pitfalls of buying tenements, so that's just like a general video, so maybe that might be worth your time to go back and have a look at that. But what we're really talking about is pegging ground. The biggest problem that you're going to have is that there's very little ground around, and so basically people get desperate, and I understand that 100%, because basically if you haven't got ground to work, you're never going to get started. Prospecting is all about exploring ground, acquiring ground, and then working the damn thing. That's what prospecting is. And one part of the equation is not prospecting. You need to sort of, if it's your cup of tea, if you want to get right into it and make money out of it, then you need to be acquiring ground, the right ground, and working the damn thing. So what advice would I have for you, dear subscriber that asked the question? Tricky. What I'd say is that if you're really interested in getting a bit of ground, and it's anywhere around here, i.e. sort of within a couple hundred k's of Leonora, you're more than welcome to give me a phone call and we'll have a chat. If there's areas that you're interested in, I can sort of point you in the right direction. That's up to you. Like as I said, I sort of try and help people all the time with it, because I know how hard it is to get out there and find ground. The two things I'd say is, before you start trying to get ground, because that is a long-term strategy, that takes time to build up a portfolio. Unless we suddenly get a major stock market crash and a downturn, which, even though we'll go into a recession, I don't think we'll be getting a downturn in the mining boom anyway, so not for a while. Your best bet, I feel, is to develop relationships with tenement holders and more particularly companies. So if there's ground that you've been getting Section 40Es and if you have been, and you've started talking to tenement managers or the geos and that sort of things, see if you can get them out for a overpriced cup of coffee wherever they are in West Perth, and sit down and have a real good talk and say, look, this is what we want to achieve. Is there any way that we can help each other out? That's because if someone's got the ground already, what you automatically do is save yourself, 12 months or more heartache in waiting for it to go live, and you may or may not need heritage surveys done from the AB groups and things like that. So that can be a minefield in itself. If you can get in with companies, that's your smartest bet. Let some other mug pay the bills, and if you're giving them a 10% royalty, which is standard across the board, it's called tribute. If you're giving them 10% off your plates, who cares? It's still a lot cheaper than getting tenements yourself. In terms of getting tenements yourself, have your homework ready and be ready to pounce. Right? When there is no ground available, that is the time to have a list of 50 tenements, as in 50 locales that you are interested in. And if we do get a mining crash, well, guaranteed we'll get a mining crash, because crash follows boom, follows crash. When we get a mining crash and people start shedding tenements, that's the time to pounce. With higher interest rates, and there's already a bit of pain out there, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a few tenements, a few black holes appearing. Be ready to pounce. That's the key. Learn how to attend Warden's Court, and learn how to snapple up tenements that are coming up for forfeiture, because that is a huge advantage in the marketplace to get ground. And if you're Johnny on the ground, you'll beat companies almost every time. So I hope I've answered the question as best as I can, because there is no answer. How much gold? You speak to some of the heavy hitters and they'll say, well, unless 20 ounces has come off the surface, I wouldn't touch it. Well, my experience has been different. You want areas of good alluvial where there's, particularly if you're dry blowing, where there's been lots of small gold. That's the type of ground that you want. The known patches are ideal. I wouldn't be getting excited if someone's found an ounce of little nuggets over a big area. So what? We need areas where there's been hundreds of ounces that have come off small areas. That's the sort of ground that you need to chase. The longer the prospecting goes on for, which I hope it goes on for several hundred years to come, those marginal areas will become more in demand. And even now, Lisa and I tend to work, although we've got some pretty good tenements, but we'll have a go at more marginal areas because we have to, because a lot of the good areas have been taken away and put through a mill or dry blind 3,000 times, and there's not a hell of a lot that's economic that's left. Hopefully that's of some help to you prospectors, and anytime anyone's got questions, email them through, put them in those comment thingies, and if I can answer the questions, I'll give it a crack. So take it easy, prospectors. I'm going back home now for a cold single fin ale, or I might have two. Lisa will do up the cons, see if we've made weight for the day, and tally ho. See you, prospectors.